So, good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us in our Aliran monthly tea talk, we call it. So, we have made it a hybrid talk, and we have got Manu here with us as well, one of our Aliran members who has joined us. And then we have a few who are on our Zoom call and as well Facebook Live. Evelyn and I want to keep this as a simple sharing session, a very comfortable sharing session where we want to just share our experiences in doing our part as Malaysians in strengthening democracy in Malaysia. So if you look at our system in Malaysia, it's basically a parliamentary democracy. And we have elections once in 5 years, 4.5 years. And most Malaysians, what we do is we vote once in 5 years, once in 4.5 years. We vote for our representatives to the state legislature and to the federal legislature. So this is what we call indirect democracy or representative democracy, where we are represented by the person we voted for or the person with the majority votes in our constituency at the federal and state level. But what happens in between the elections? Do we leave all our public decision making to our elected representatives, whether they are MP or our state representatives, what you had expected them to? What if we are not happy with their performance? What if you're not happy with certain policies that are being implemented? Do we just sit in our house and criticize, uh, lament, and rant and rave? So it can be about very basic things that we want to voice our opinion. It can be a very basic things like cleanliness, garbage collection in our residential area, or it can be very major national issues, like, for example, the DNAA for Zahid Hamidi. And we feel very strongly about it and we want to say something about it. So how do we go about it? So this is what we call participatory democracy, where citizens are able to take a stand, make their stand known, voice their opinion, express their views on any aspect of policy. And here we're talking about the different, there are many stages in the policy process. So it can be in the policy formulation stage, it can be in the policy implementation stage, it can be in the policy evaluation stage or the monitoring stage. Usually, citizens are affected at the implementation stage, right? We are not happy with the way certain policies are being implemented, and we want to say something about it. Or we have some grouses, or maybe we have some input which we would like to put forward, which we want the government to give attention to. So this is where participatory democracy comes in. Now, how is it related to empowerment? Citizen participation enhances empowerment or fosters empowerment. It's through participation that we become empowered citizens. So when we talk about empowerment, it's a process of enhancing an individual's or group's capacity or confidence to influence policies or to influence decisions made by the government. And of course, these are policies and decisions which affect our lives. So empowerment gives us some power, some control over our lives. Now, putting aside people who are basically apathetic or ignorant, maybe you have people who are just couldn't be bothered or just don't know enough about the policies. So they don't want to get involved at all. They're completely out of the picture. But there are many people who wish they could say something about it, who wish they can do something about the frustration that they feel, the dissatisfaction they feel when they see policies being badly implemented, or maybe even wrong policies being implemented, right? So most people would feel very helpless, right? They feel helpless, they feel hopeless, they feel powerless. They feel they have no control over public decision making. So this is where we talk about participatory democracy. But there's also many people who feel the fear of the consequences. What will happen if I speak up? What will happen if I say something and I criticize government policy? What's going to happen to me? All right. So it is not just a question of ignorance, apathy, complacency, inability, lack of awareness, which hinders participation. Very often it's this fear of consequences. What's going to happen to me if I speak up? What's going to happen to me if I do something or say something against what the government is doing? So for me, personally, when I talk about participatory democracy, one of the biggest hurdles is fear. Very often people do know what are the avenues, they do know what they could do to express their dissatisfaction, but very often what stops them is fear. So the first thing we need to do is to lose the fear of fear. We need to lose that feeling of being fearful. Now, why do people have fear? Because sometimes there's a price to pay when you speak up. So in participatory democracy, we know of many examples of people who have been brave to speak up, uh, voice their disapproval, voice their dissatisfaction in some way or another. And sometimes if you cross a certain line, then you pay the price. And I myself have paid a personal price in some ways, but there are many others. I'm sure you know of people in Malaysia who have paid a heavy price for being uh, critical of government policies, being critical of those in power. So that's sometimes a price that we have to pay. But then the question that we have to ask ourselves is, what are we going to do? Are we going to just keep quiet and let things be, whoever is in power, do whatever they need to do, and then we wait for the next elections and then we vote them out? If you can, if you're able to vote them out, right? Sometimes you vote people out and then they come back in. All right. So they come back in as a unity government in the form of a unity government. And you thought you had kicked them out, but they did come back in anyway. So even elections has its limitations. You may have the best member of parliament in your constituency. You may have voted for the best, most hardworking, most intelligent, most committed person, the most committed state assembly representatives. But again, there are limitations as to what they can do. They are all governed by uh, party discipline. They have to abide by what their party leaders say. So sometimes that carries more weight than what the constituent says. Uh, So this is where participatory democracy comes in. And I just want to share my experiences in the last, I think, 30, 40 years that I've been involved in some way or another, right? And in the early years, of course, there was a lot of fear. I still remember in the 80s and 90s, whenever we want to talk about something, we look behind, look over our shoulders to see who is listening in, because we had the ISA and the Sedition Act hanging over our heads, right? So, and me, especially as a civil servant in academia, there was a lot of restrictions on what we could do. So we have to work within those limits, those restrictions. Does it mean we cannot do anything? No, very often, I always believe in the power of one. I have come across many people who say, Allah, I'm just one person, la, what can I do? But I always feel even one person can do something. So the power of one, where if something you see that's not right happening in your environment, what can you do as a person? But how many people would want to take that initiative? So when you in participatory democracy, you have many choices, right? Some people choose to be silent and they say, okay, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to be silent. But being silent or being neutral, as some people say, doesn't mean it has no consequences. Being silent generally means being complicit. Being silent, being neutral means we are supporting the status quo. So doesn't mean if you're silent, therefore, you didn't, no, silence has its uh, effects as well. Some people will voice out. And when you voice out, of course, you have to decide at what level you want to voice out, where, how much you want to voice out, all right? And it has its consequences as well. Of course, there are many who exit the whole scene. They just leave, all right? There are problems with my children are having problems in government school, so I just take them out, put them in a private school. So you exit, and you don't want to participate. You just exit. You're not happy with what's happening in the country. You're not happy with certain policies, so you just exit. You migrate. You emigrate to another country. All right, that's a choice as well. There are some people who feel that that's the only effective, workable, and maybe best for their family. Right. So everyone has their own way of coping with this situation. But I started in my early years basically working as an individual. Whenever I see some issue which I'm not happy about, then I speak up. I do something about it. And I have seen that it does work, even if it's one individual. Recently, I am sure some of you have read about this in Free Malaysia Today. There was an article about a young schoolgirl who wrote about how the school did not allow her to wear, the Indians to wear sari for one of their cultural events. And she wrote about it. And the Hindu students were not allowed to wear their sacred thread. And she wrote about it in Free Malaysia Today. When she wrote about it in Free Malaysia Today, um, the Ministry of Education actually looked into the matter and came up, reminded teachers of the directive from the ministry, which actually does not have these kind of restrictions. So these are imposed by individual schools, headmasters, headmistresses, teachers, right? And this is today. This happened just, I think, last month, right? But about 15 years ago, it happened to my daughter in her school, in a government school, where her cross was confiscated because the discipline teacher said, you shouldn't wear all these religious items and religious icons. So your cross, your talisman, yeah, she had like a 1 centimeter cross which she wore on her chain, all right? So the cross, the talisman, your sacred thread around your wrist, they're all confiscated. This is about 15 years ago, right? So what I did was I went to the school and I spoke to the headmistress, asked her to show me where does it say that you can't wear all this. And then she showed me the rule book to say that, oh, it's a accessory is not allowed. And I told her, why do you say the cross is an accessory? All right? Why do you say the cross is an accessory? So I questioned her on that. And then I told her, but they refused to give in, and they said, no, this is the rule, and in school we have to follow the rules, the students have to follow the rules. And I told her, I'm going to the education department to make a complaint about this. And the very next day I went to the education department. And when I went there, I was given such good reception. All right, the officer said the officer in charge is away, but never mind, I'll take down a report. And he took down my report, and he said, and then the next day, the officer in charge called me at home and told me we will look into it. Actually, there are no such rules. There's no such rule saying that your child cannot wear a cross or religious icon or religious item to school. And he said, don't worry, we will send a letter to all the schools in the district so they won't be able to identify that it's you who made the complaint. And then I told the officer, don't worry, you can mention it's me who made the complaint because I told the headmistress I'm going to go to the education department. So I was very pleasantly surprised with the reception I got at the ministry. Many people presume that, oh, you go to the ministry, nobody's going to bother, you just complain, nothing happens. But that has not been my experience. I find that if you go to the right channels and you bring up the issue, and it is a relevant issue, they do look into it. And to me, this is the power of what one person can do. Because after that, they send out a circular to all the schools in the district saying, clarifying that this is not what the education ministry policy is. Right? So the difference is 15 years ago, I had to go to the education department to do it. Today, a schoolgirl can just contact the media, right? Free Malaysia Today. She can send an article or a letter to the media, and then it gets published, and then action is taken. Immediately, you get a response from the Ministry of Education. So this is participatory democracy, an example of participatory democracy where We're looking at how policies are implemented, and if it is going wrong in some way, the implementation, we as citizens are able to do something about it, right? Of course, we can also work through CSOs, and I've done it ever since I left university, all right? I've been involved in CSOs like Amnesty International, Aliran, Tenaga Nita, right? Doing what we can through CSOs. But there are also many things we can do as an individual. Now, I want to talk about the role of Bersih in participatory democracy, because I think Bersih has played such an important role in empowering citizens. When Bersih had its first rally, I was still a civil servant, so we were we were given instructions that we cannot get involved in any way with any Bersih rally. So I was so disappointed, because as an academic and someone who's teaching political science, I wanted very much to be on the ground, you know, at the rally, but I couldn't because of this. So what I did was, at that time also, I missed the first rally, but there was a campaign where they encouraged everyone to wear yellow on Saturdays. So, yellow wasn't my favorite color, okay? But because of this, I went and made sure I bought a yellow t-shirt, and I wore it every Saturday for weeks and weeks on end. Because that was my way of showing my protest against what's happening in the electoral system, right? This was like 2007, 2008. Right? So I felt empowered by just wearing a yellow t-shirt. And I remember Saturday was my grocery shopping day. And when I went out, and I used to bump into other people wearing yellow, and I used to look at them, wondering, are you doing it for the same reason that I'm doing it? And then we get a smile to acknowledge, yeah, we know why we're wearing yellow, right? And that was very empowering. It's a very simple thing, just showing your protest by just wearing yellow. All right. And these are very simple ways. This is where I say it's the power of one. Alone. Yeah. Yeah. And I think Bersih played a very important role there, in empowering citizens. And then finally in 2011, then I was able to take part in my first Bersih rally. I went there with my husband. It was such an empowering experience to feel that you are part of this process to bring about change for the betterment of my country, you know. So, and we are, I think Bersih, I have to take my hats off to Bersih for this, for the role they played in mobilizing and conscientizing Malaysians, ordinary Malaysians, to show that you can do something about it, right? And I mean, I am a lecturer in political science, so I teach about electoral systems and political systems in Malaysia and all. But with the work done by Bersih, I used to meet ordinary Malaysians who seem to know so much about the electoral system, who know about gerrymandering, who know about malapportionment, and I used to wonder, wow, people are being educated in the process. You know, you create awareness, and people learn more about the system of governance in the country. And this is the achievement of Bersih, I feel, right? And this is participatory democracy. People begin to pay more attention to these kind of issues, and ordinary Malaysians became braver to step up and volunteer as polling agent, as counting agents, which in the early years, it was you are a staunch party member, then you go in as a polling agent, counting agent. But I think one of the achievements of Bersih is when ordinary people felt the need, the desire, the courage to come forward and to do their part, to make sure that we have free and fair elections. And that, for me, is an example of participatory democracy. Right? So now we have come to a stage where people have lost the fear of participating in street protests. I mean, street protest is a legitimate form of political participation. It's nothing illegal or there's nothing illegitimate about it. Although in some countries like Malaysia, they tend to make it look like it's illegal, but it's not. Right? It's a legitimate form of political participation. And now many people have lost the fear of participating in street protests. I have managed to recruit not just my husband, but my other family members, my good friends, my church members. So for birthday 3, 4, we went as a group, right? And it was so good to see people going in without any fear, maybe a little bit of fear, but going in with the determination to, yes, I want to make make my presence felt. I want to take a stand on these issues. And that is participatory democracy. But participation is not just about street protests, right? There are many avenues for political participation. And in our 3 levels of government, federal, state, local, we can participate at all these different levels. For example, of course, if you have a very progressive MP or ADUN, it's easier to participate. I remember after the 2008 elections, in my area we were at that time Petaling Jaya constituency. We had Low Guo Ben as our MP. Do you remember Low Guo Ben of the Lingam tapes? So he stood for elections and he won. But he made it very clear in the beginning that he's very inexperienced. He's very poor in his Bahasa Malaysia. So a few people, they sent out a request for people to help him to prepare parliamentary questions in Bahasa Malaysia. So I got a message asking me whether I would be willing to help him to prepare parliamentary questions in Bahasa Malaysia because he's new to the field and he's inexperienced and his Bahasa Malaysia is not good, so he couldn't do it. So a few of us, we did that. We prepared parliamentary questions and sent to him, and I think probably one of my questions got selected lah. So it gave me such a good feeling, sense of satisfaction that I'm doing something, right? Because 2008 brought about, it was really a watershed for us. It brought about the beginning of the change, or a stronger change that we could sense happening in Malaysia, right? And to be part of it was so satisfying and so fulfilling for me. Now today, of course, in my area of Subang Jaya, we are very blessed to have very progressive Member of Parliament and state representative, state rep, YB Wong Chen and YB Michelle Ng. Very progressive people who are very humble, very hardworking, and we are able to communicate directly with our elected representatives when we are not happy about something. Recently, because now we have, those were the days where if you want to talk to your MP, you have to go through their PA, you have to make an appointment, and it was so difficult. I never was able to get in touch with my MP before. But when Keadilan took over, all right, so Low Goben they contacted a few of us and said, okay, can you help to set questions? Now with Wong Chen and Michelle, we all have their handphone numbers. So we contact them through WhatsApp. We know where their service center is. We can just walk into the service center. But we don't even have to walk into the service center. We send them a WhatsApp. We're not happy about something. We send them the pictures and say, garbage not collected, drains clogged up, people are complaining. Can you do something about it? So we have MPs who have become very approachable, who have made sure that they are contactable, they are reachable, and they are responsive to what their constituents want. So in that sense, in my area, we are very lucky. So I've organized, because I'm also the chief of my Rukun Tetangga in my area. So you can work through your Rukun Tetangga, you can work to your residents association. So I've organized dialogue sessions with my MP, with my ADUN, so that the residents can come and meet them and bring up their issues. And these are all related to policies. They're not happy with certain policies, the way it's being implemented. It can be very basic things like your security in our area. Okay, crime rate is so high in our area, lots of break-ins, right? So yeah, so we want to have a dialogue session with the police, and the MP and the ADUN facilitate that and make that possible, so the residents have direct access to the decision makers. All right, so that is participative democracy. But Recently, I remember in this present parliamentary sitting, Wong Chen asked a question about canteens and the price of food in schools, and that was actually highlighted to him by one of his constituents. So you have MPs who are progressive in that way, who highlight actual issues which constituents are concerned about, right? And recently also, Shah Razan Johan, MP for Kajang, I think, he, Bangi, yeah, he brought up, I was watching the parliamentary sessions and he brought up about public transport system. And he is working with a particular CSO who gave him some input about how to improve our transport policies, public transport policies. And he's a progressive MP. He was willing to engage with experts in the field, with CSOs who are on the field, right, and get views from them to improve the policy. So this is what I mean by participatory democracy. Now, recently also we heard about a 9-year-old girl called Maria who wrote a letter to the Prime Minister about toilets in her school. And the Prime Minister talked about it at the budget speech. And I was like, wow, it's a 9-year-old girl, man. And she is practicing participatory democracy. Power of one again, you know. So there are lots of avenues available. It's whether we want to uh, take advantage of those avenues and access those avenues and do our part. Now, I think in the last 10 years especially, social media has made it so much easier for people to participate in public decision making. So political participation is made even easier and possible, and empowerment has been made even faster through social media. Maybe because you can be anonymous on social media, and therefore you're able to. There's the fear of consequences is not so high, maybe, you know. But looking at, for example, the recent case of the Kantan uh, vegetable farmers, right? Not everybody will be willing and able to go and stand together beside the farmers and demonstrate against state land policies, right? Not everybody can do that. But now you can just send a WhatsApp message, all right? Voice your protest through a WhatsApp message to the MB of Perak or the MP of Tambun, who is the Prime Minister himself, right? So you just sit at home and send a WhatsApp message to show your disapproval or your protest against the state land policies. So there are many ways to engage now, and it is to us, right? There are many apps that are available. For example, for us in Selangor, we have the Response Rakyat app, where you don't just use the app to make a complaint, but you can give input, you can give suggestions on what can be done to improve certain policies at the local government level, right? The Majlis Perbandaran, the city halls, and so on. What can be done, which affects us directly. So, in conclusion, what I see is over the last 10 years, especially, the avenues for political participation in public decision making has really improved and has increased. So it's up to us whether we want to take advantage of this. It's up to us whether we feel that, um, you know, what's the word they say? Take ownership. Whether we want to take ownership of our uh, our country, take ownership of public decision making in our country, and how far we want to go. It's really up to us. So I think I'll stop there for now.